$18 billion. Up to $18 billion spread out over the next 10 years. That is the staggering settlement Meta has just agreed to pay, alongside sharp new limits on teen use of Facebook and Instagram. It is the largest teen safety settlement any platform has paid in history, resolving claims from nearly all 50 U.S. states that these apps were fundamentally engineered to be addictive for minors.
Yeah, it's a massive number.
This is the Koda Signal. First, we're unpacking what Meta's $18 billion settlement means for every AI product team building a recommendation engine. And then we're looking at why a surprise 3.3% inflation print might reprice the entire industry's infrastructure plans.
Right.
Because when I first read this, I assumed it was just another massive tech fine, just a cost of doing business. But I was wrong, and here's what changed my mind.
Yeah.
It's not the penalty itself, it's the precedent it sets for the actual architecture of the apps we use every day. We are looking at a fundamental rewrite of the rules for algorithmic feeds.
We really are. I mean, what we are witnessing is the arrival of a permanent compliance price tag for engagement-optimized recommenders.
Right.
That $18 billion is now essentially the baseline cost line that every single AI product team inherits the moment they decide to, build a consumer-facing algorithm.
Wait, I have to push back there.
Sure.
Because isn't an $18 billion fine just the cost of doing business for a behemoth like Meta? I mean, why wouldn't a startup or a mid-cap company just ignore this precedent until they're big enough to actually get sued? Like, move fast and break things, right?
Because the environment that allowed Meta to scale first and apologize later, it just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
This settlement isn't just a retroactive penalty. It dictates ongoing architectural terms. And investors know this.
Right. The VCs are watching.
Exactly. If a startup walks into a pitch meeting today with a consumer social app and their growth model relies on unrestricted algorithmic engagement, venture capital just won't touch it. They're looking at an unfunded liability.
Wow. So the money dries up before they even build it.
Yeah. The state-by-state politics and the incredibly messy litigation timeline that led to this settlement, they were basically irrelevant now.
Yeah.
What remains is a de facto template for how under 18 recommendation systems must be designed from the ground up.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you are an engineer or product manager right now and you're looking at the models you're training, what does this actually force into model design?
Right.
Is this like having to retrofit a theme park with safety rails after the roller coasters are already built and running at top speed?
The theme park analogy holds up perfectly, actually. So imagine building a park designed purely to optimize for adrenaline.
Okay.
You're spinning people around as fast as possible to keep them on the rides. Then suddenly, regulators mandate that anyone under 18 needs a strict speed limit and a mandatory park exit after 1 hour.
Right.
You can't just put a warning sign on the entrance gate. You have to shut down the rides and re-engineer the actual physics of the roller coasters for a specific subset of visitors. Yeah. In the software world, this translates to the consent terms Meta just agreed to, which include strict caps on minor accounts and overnight limits acting as a digital curfew.
A digital curfew. Just let the mechanics of that sink in.
Yeah.
The underlying optimization function of these models was so ruthlessly efficient at keeping people scrolling that the countermeasure is a hard system-level stop.
Yeah.
But how does a team actually execute a digital curfew without breaking the entire platform? You can't just tell a monolithic neural net, which is, mathematically desperate to find the next engaging video, to suddenly care about what time it is for 10% of the user base.
No, you absolutely can't. You have to completely bifurcate your architecture.
Wow.
You build routing systems that intercept the user request, verify the age tier dynamically, and switch them to an intentionally de-optimized model during those restricted hours.
Wait, so you are actively burning engineering cycles to build a less engaging product on purpose?
On purpose. You are introducing deliberate friction into a system that has spent 15 years ruthlessly eliminating friction.
That's crazy.
And to pull that off, you have to maintain parallel recommendation spaces. Think about the compute overhead.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about the compute.
Right, because you aren't just running one massive collaborative filtering model anymore. You have your standard model, and then you have a constrained model that strips out specific embedding layers. Maybe it ignores temporal hooks, or, it suppresses viral velocity multipliers.
It says ripping out the engine.
Exactly. Plus, you need a robust, privacy-respecting age verification layer sitting on top of all this, constantly checking state without introducing unbearable latency.
Right, because if the app takes 5 seconds to load, everyone leaves anyway.
Exactly.
So the product is no longer just the feed. The product is the feed, plus a massive, invisible scaffolding of compliance. And maintaining parallel embedding spaces means you are essentially doubling a significant portion of your compute costs. If one model hallucinates or accidentally serves a hyper-engaging rabbit hole to a restricted account, you violate a consent decree.
That's the real risk. The era of simply pointing a massive neural net at a database of users, giving it a reward function for time on page, and walking away, that is over.
Right.
Building the model is now the cheap part. Engineering the guardrails so the model complies with this new legal baseline is where the capital actually gets spent.
And speaking of capital being spent, if capital is getting more expensive while compliance forces these massive engineering overheads, builders are getting squeezed on both ends.
Definitely.
Because while product teams are eating the cost of parallel software architecture, the physical infrastructure side of AI is having to recalculate its entire game plan based on a single percentage in a macroeconomic report.
Yeah, the collision between the cost of algorithmic compliance and the cost of physical capital is, it's the defining tension in tech right now.
Let's look at the data that triggered this. The U.S. Core Personal Consumption Expenditures, Core PCE, which, for those tracking, excludes volatile food and energy prices, just printed at 3.3% year over year.
Which is high.
Yeah, and the headline, PCE came in even hotter at 3.7%. This effectively shatters the smooth disinflation narrative that the markets were heavily trading on.
It really does.
But looking at consumer spending metrics and AI data centers, the connection isn't immediately obvious. Why does a team trying to provision a 50,000 GPU cluster care about a consumer inflation index?
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Core PCE happens to be the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge.
Okay.
So when that number prints hot at 3.3%, the live risk of an interest rate hike stays firmly on the table.
Yeah.
And when you are building a massive AI data center, facilities requiring billions of dollars, dedicated power substations, multi-year construction timelines, you are relying entirely on the debt markets.
So you are projecting future workloads 10 years out to justify borrowing a mountain of cash today.
Exactly. And higher interest rates tighten the discount rate applied to those future cash flows.
Okay, let's ground that in the tech stack rather than corporate finance.
Sure.
It feels like pre-provisioning 5 years of enterprise-grade cloud compute based on a massive Series C you haven't closed yet. And suddenly the term sheet gets, twice as expensive.
Yeah.
The expected revenue from your software hasn't changed, but the cost of the runway you need to build it just cratered your margins.
That captures the mechanics perfectly. The fundamental reality of the generative AI boom is that it was completely underwritten by cheap money.
Right.
Near 0% interest rates allowed companies to make incredibly speculative, capital-intensive bets on physical compute infrastructure. When the cost of capital spikes, the net present value of running AI models in a data center built in 2026 plummets.
So the math gets incredibly tight.
Very tight.
Even if the models are a massive success, the debt servicing just eats the profit.
It creates a ripple effect across the entire physical supply chain. Consider the energy requirements for a second.
Oh yeah, power is huge.
To build these clusters, hyperscalers are signing long-term power purchase agreements with utility companies. If the tech companies pause construction because debt is too expensive, the energy providers see their projected revenue vanish.
Wow.
Hardware vendors manufacturing the liquid cooling systems, they see orders deferred. The sheer physical expansion of artificial intelligence is chained to the cost of borrowing.
Which puts builders in this brutal vice grip today.
Yeah.
On the software layer, you have Meta's precedent demanding complex, expensive safety routing. On the hardware layer, sticky inflation is keeping borrowing costs high, making the raw compute more expensive to secure. So the brute force scaling era, where you just threw money and parameters at every problem, is effectively dead.
Survival now requires a level of operational discipline that just hasn't existed in Silicon Valley for a decade. Companies have to extract maximum efficiency from every single engineering hour and every single watt of compute.
Yeah, and if capital constraints and compliance are forcing builders to be radically efficient, they have to rely on better tooling to survive the squeeze. Let's look at what's actually shipping to solve this. Here's what else is moving today.
Okay.
First up, Treywork has made a highly specific architectural decision. Instead of offering one massive, omniscient chat interface, they split their AI agent into 3 distinct modes: work, code, and design.
which is really smart. By splitting the modes, they are solving a massive context degradation problem.
Right.
Because a code generation task requires deep repository mapping and rigid syntax adherence. But writing a research memo requires fluid semantic reasoning and tone adjustments. When you force one model to balance both contexts simultaneously in a single prompt window, the attention mechanism fractures.
The model just gets confused.
Exactly. Mixing them degrades the output of both.
The utility is immediately obvious for teams trying to optimize their workflows. You point the code mode directly at a real complex repository, point the work mode at your internal documentation, and actually measure which mode saves time on specific tasks.
Yeah.
It allows organizations to baseline the efficiency gains before trying to standardize the entire engineering floor on one generic tool.
The modularity prevents the AI from burning compute on irrelevant context. It's that operational discipline we were just talking about.
Right. Moving to the opposite approach, we have Auto by Workato. This is pitching itself as a true super agent, promising to run end-to-end projects across Slack, web applications, and SMS simultaneously.
The ambition is impressive, I'll give them that.
Yeah.
But operating an agent across that many disparate surfaces introduces severe compounding risk.
Oh, because of the handoffs?
Yes. Every time the agent hands data off from a structured web app to an unstructured Slack thread, the chance for hallucination or process failure multiplies. The error doesn't just stay in one window, it cascades through the company's communication channels.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare. So if you are an IT director adopting this, you do not let it run the core business on day one.
Absolutely not. You tightly scope it to one repeatable, thoroughly documented process first. Vendor onboarding or maybe internal ticket triage.
Okay, keep it boxed in.
Yeah. You sandbox the agent, measure its success rate against a strictly defined rubric, and only expand its surface area once it proves it can navigate the handoffs without cascading errors.
Start small, measure the failure rate, then expand. I like that.
Yeah.
Our third hit today is Dubao Work, ByteDance's new office assistant. And what stands out here isn't necessarily the underlying model, but the delivery mechanism. They bypassed the browser tab entirely and shipped a dedicated desktop client.
A desktop client fundamentally changes what the AI can interact with. Browser sandboxing intentionally restricts access for security reasons, right?
Yeah, the browser keeps everything walled off.
Exactly.
Mm.
By moving to the OS level, Dubao Work can interact with local file systems, clipboard histories, and active window contexts.
Which solves the most painful friction points in corporate workflows. I mean, if you are manually summarizing a local, massive spreadsheet, comparing 3 different versions of a legal document stored on your hard drive, or extracting specific financial figures out of a dense PDF report,
Right.
a browser-based AI requires endless copying and pasting. It's terrible.
Yeah.
A desktop-native tool has the deep system access to handle that data ingestion directly.
It does.
Ugh.
But the trade-off is the security footprint.
Yeah.
Deeper system access means you have to be incredibly strict about data governance and what internal IP you are allowing the client to index.
Yeah, always a necessary trade-off when you want convenience.
Exactly.
Finally, Magic Arena is launching a new platform for running head-to-head model evaluations. But instead of relying on standard leaderboards, the platform lets you use your own custom prompts for the bake-off.
This arrives at a critical moment. If you look at the public coding benchmarks right now, you see unsigned, anonymous frontier models topping the charts constantly.
Yeah.
But the standard leaderboards are losing their utility as a signal of true capability.
Because of Goodhart's law, right.
Exactly the concept. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Right.
Vendors are heavily optimizing their training data to perform well on the specific evaluation sets used by the public leaderboards. The models are overfitting to the test rather than developing generalizable reasoning.
So they're just studying for the final exam instead of actually learning the material.
That is exactly what's happened.
And Magic Arena lets builders bypass that entirely. If you run a 5-prompt bake-off using the exact niche tasks your team executes every day, the results actually matter to your bottom line.
Yes.
You aren't trusting a generic test score. You are proving which model handles your specific data architecture best.
You build your own prompt sets and keep them private. Then, when vendors inevitably drop their API prices or release new weight updates, you run your custom gauntlet again. You become your own benchmark.
You become your own benchmark. And maintaining total control over how you evaluate efficiency, that is huge right now.
Oh, absolutely.
So pulling all of these threads together, the sheer architectural cost of meta-settlement, the macro pressure of sticky inflation on data center capex, and the hyper-specific focus of these new agentic tools. What is the clear signal here?
The clear signal is that the era of building AI without looking at the price tag is permanently over.
Yeah.
Whether that price tag is the massive legal compliance and parallel engineering required for algorithmic safety, or the rising capital costs required to pour concrete for data centers in a high-interest rate environment. The blank check period has ended.
The free money is gone.
It's gone. The product teams that survive this cycle will be the ones who engineer for efficiency, modularity, and compliance from the very first line of code.
The constraints are forcing the industry to finally mature. And it sets up a massive forward-looking question, Will the next PCE inflation print show enough cooling to free up the CapEx plans that were built on the promise of cheap money, or will it freeze them in place? We'll be watching. That's today's Signal. Go build something with it.